Welcome, good people, to Italy. In this, our ever-changing corner of Florence. Here's what's coming up in today's episode of Renovating a Palace. As you guessed, guys, today is time for the reveal of our grand fresco room kitchen, along with all of the work and drama that it took to make this uniquely gorgeous space come together. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as we delve into this episode, you'll see just how much having this small but mighty YouTube community means to us in navigating the ups and downs of renovating a palace. But without further ado, we're picking up right where the last episode left off, with us trying to settle into this wing of the palazzo with the delivery of our kitchen having been delayed. Transitioning from the design plan to the state of affairs about a week after moving in, you can see that the delivery was finally made and we were consequently very busy boys indeed. Dressed in slippers and PJs, Em would help construct the skeleton of the cabinets while I planned and secured each one to the fabric of the room. Now, chewing up part of that gorgeous terracotta that we just installed was honestly a little disconcerting, but soon the bones of the kitchen and its island were secured. The next morning, it was time to take a trip to a little Tuscan town named Carrara to coordinate the next very exciting phase. You see, we were determined that while the bones of our kitchen may have been from IKEA, its finishing touches would be of the highest quality Italian materials. The main kitchen counter, as you can see here, was a 3.5 meter single piece of Carrara marble, and it actually had to be cut and rejoined because of its prohibitive weight and size. But once in place, the veins of the marble joined seamlessly. That said, this milestone moment was not without a hitch and unfortunately became overshadowed by a nasty surprise. So guys, I was hoping to have a completed kitchen to share with you this evening, but the marble contractor, out of 3 pieces, 2 of them have been cut wrong. So there's nothing to show, unfortunately. Maybe tomorrow, otherwise it's going to be in the new year. And this revealed to us the brutal risk of pushing to get such key jobs done just a week before Christmas. As you can see from the marble backsplash, the holes cut out for the 2 wall plugs were wrong, rendering the whole piece of marble unusable. At this point my heart did begin to drop, but I kept filming with my spirits high that at least the kitchen island countertop would at least allow us to install our much needed sink. But this was not to be either. And I wonder that as this piece is brought in, you might be able to spot what I'd only just noticed myself. Just like the backsplash, the 2 cutouts for the island plug towers were far from being symmetrical. What followed was a bit of a tense summit with the contractors, and although they did admit fault, we were skeptical of a solution being found in such short order. As dawn broke on a crisp Saturday morning, we were at least greeted by a warm family visit of Em's relatives, along with some of our favourite pastries. And then we got the call. The contractors had been working through the night to remake the missing pieces of our project, and would be there later that morning to install them. They honestly really outdid themselves, and I think they knew just how much it would mean to us to be able to have a working kitchen through the festive season. And with our space already a hive of activity that day, we got to share in enjoying the completion of the marble works with some of our closest family. It was a doddle to then install the island sink and plug towers, the latter of which not only served as a convenient way to get the most out of the kitchen island, but also as an important moment of design that pushed the boundaries of what might typically thought to be possible with an IKEA kitchen. The structural elements now in place, we could use the last few days before the holidays to build up the remaining skeleton of the kitchen. These 2 towers I was building were designed to serve 2 purposes. One, to act as a symmetrical framing of the kitchen to harmonize it with the symmetry of the frescoes above. And two, to act as a sort of hidden smart hub of all the modern accessories that we like to use in kitchens these days. But more on that in just a bit. But as you might have noticed in the foreground, M was having problems with the tap installation. He was trying to install a filtration system so that the tap could also serve drinking water, but little did I know that my offer to help him out would lead to one of my most embarrassing moments ever captured on camera. Okay, stop, turn it off. Did you hear me? Anne! Anne! Turn it off! Recovered from that moment of lost decorum, we finally got the filter system working, and again, it was very satisfying to successfully have added another bespoke element to the kitchen. And with our family commitments for Christmas just 48 hours away, we dug deep to finally finish this behemoth of a project. It's always interesting with how complex projects always seem to take so long in the planning phase, and the initial start can feel so slow compared to how quickly things finally come together in the end. Now, a key ingredient in getting this kitchen design right was that we'd have a powerful enough extraction hood to protect the fresco above, but that it was as invisible as possible so as not to introduce any visual clash of this industrial sort of element into an otherwise historical space. Finding the most appropriate ways to introduce these new aesthetics into the room was fundamental to every decision that we made, and fortunately we found a system for the hood which would be entirely hidden by the cabinetry, with a neoclassical column element to be added later that would disguise the exposed pipe above. Ending the day with just a visual hint of what was to come with the frontages added, it was an incredible feeling to just take a moment to step back and appreciate how much had changed since the marble works had finished. Starting to see the kitchen sit so comfortably within the space without feeling garish at all was very reassuring, and the hard work to hide the industrial elements like the fridge and freezer had worked incredibly well. Speaking of which, can you see where they are? They're right there, I promise you. We'll be showing you off all those little details in a bit, but our final day was onto the frontages chosen for their nod to the Victorian shaker style with a soft gloss finish. But of course, not content with just that, it was time to bring this space to life with some lighting. Along with the cabinetry, we also installed a Venetian glass chandelier, which we were incredibly lucky to have thrifted locally, not least because it was exactly the same as the chandelier we'd sourced for our fresco room of the last 2-year-long renovation of our old previous apartment. Video link to that at the end of this if you haven't seen it yet. But for us, it was just a perfect element of continuity that was very special. All that remained was a nice finishing touch that I thought of at the last moment. You can see here that the cabinet's a bit boxy. So on this side you'll see I've started to install cornicing, and just sort of switching between the two, you can see how such a small detail can have a huge effect. After a little rejig of the dishwasher that had sprung a leak, and so no, that is not the fridge or freezer, we could finally stock up on the kitchen to unleash it as a wholesome, somewhat completed space just in time for the family holidays, with just a hint of how complex the kitchen actually was hidden nicely behind the hood cabinet. With Christmas knocking at our door, we tidied up so we could live behind a festive illusion that our lives were perhaps not quite so messy and chaotic, at least for a few days. And we enjoyed some much needed beautiful family moments. It may have been a Christmas of humble gifts, but all we needed was each other.
Ciao! Ciao! Ciao!
Well, each other and the other main character in the story, of course, Florence itself.
Oh, fuck.
But you didn't think we'd go resting so easily, did you? The first moment we got, it was time to hire a van and go thrifting around Tuscany. And boy did we get lucky with these two statement pieces that would flank either side of the kitchen. Back in Florence, our much anticipated vintage chrome oven from Smeg had arrived, and with a little modification, it filled the remaining cavity in our kitchen in rather spectacular fashion. At this point, we took a little step back for a couple weeks. Not only because it's something I'd always recommend with any designer, but don't forget we still had 6 other principal rooms in our portion of the palazzo to tackle. But after a little bit, and with a fresh perspective, I updated the digital design plan to reflect our intentions going forward. The 2 grand antique mirrors would sit directly opposite each other at each end of the kitchen island, with a storage cabinet beneath one and that fabulous decorative fireplace beneath the other. This coincided with the moment we started to install some baroque stucco elements made by local artisans, which is something I'd love to cover in another video if you let me know you'd like to see it. And this also allowed us to conceal the extraction tube above the kitchen. Once installed, we weren't quite satisfied with the sorry state of the fireplace cover. After consulting a historian, we understood that the cover was likely a newer artisanal addition that was not as old as the frame itself, made to stop drafts from entering the home of the previous owners. After inspecting the damage and researching the best way to sensitively restore it, it was a matter of painstakingly color matching the distressed areas and gradually reinstating the lost pigments. It was never about adding anything new, but instead only to better conserve the motifs that already existed. It was a long process, and the result was subtle, but in my opinion, a great improvement. In addition, the cream color of the frame was given a fresh coat, and in fact was also color matched to the shade of the kitchen, harmonizing them yet further. And speaking of color matching, we bought a couple wooden baluster spindles to act as columns in the kitchen island to help take the load of the heavy marble above. After being painted, they were secured in place, and all that remained was to add a decorative beading to join the backing panels. The final structural change we made was to move the chandelier from the center of the room to instead sit right above the marble island. This both allowed us to lower it a bit for dramatic effect, and it also made the infinity effect of the mirrors sing together all the more beautifully. And just like that, our penultimate transition shows the enormous impact that could be made with a considered approach to lighting, interior design, and dressing. Unfortunately though, the situation was not coming together as well as it may have seemed at first glance. So guys, it's now approaching the end of February. We began our renovation last year in October. You may notice behind me there is something missing round about this area, and essentially we have been without any form of central heating or cooling for that matter ever since we moved in, and we are still on tenterhooks as to when our air conditioning system, which will provide both the heating and cooling for the entire apartment, will arrive. This little black box behind me, just there, has been our only source of heat throughout these cold winter months. Fortunately, being in the Mediterranean, we only get cold snaps every now and again, but it has been rough from time to time. Eventually, they are due to arrive. We've had this predisposition ready for months. We've even had issues with our neighbors who have had to deal with this same sort of exposed wiring and cabling exiting our side of the apartment into the communal courtyard, and it essentially being an eyesore. And in this kind of building, that's not ideal, and our neighbors haven't enjoyed that at all. We're still sort of stuck, and I can only hope that they arrive before another famous February cold snap hits us. Let's see. And guys, this is exactly what I meant when I thanked you at the start of this video for being a part of this community, even passively. Because we came to realize that in these moments of deep frustration, which were on top of all the little dramas of any renovation, giving us discomfort for prolonged periods of time, that, well, it was just super therapeutic and helpful in giving us some peace and perspective simply by filming this whole process. It gave us a creative outlet that we knew was building a community with like-minded individuals from all over the world. So before I share the final grand reveal, I'd like to say thanks again. And please do keep supporting us by commenting, sharing, or in the very least, subscribing with the bell icon active so that you can find us again. The kitchen occupies a full half of this grand fresco room, but with the neutral marbles and colours reflecting a soft gloss glow which makes the sizable design melt seamlessly into the space. Accents of golds, greens, and just a touch of blue draw from the frescoes above, while the infinity effect of the mirrors both draws in the curiosity of those who congregate around the island, while vastly expanding outwards the dimensions of the space. The drawers of the two towers host our coffee, spices, utensils, and cutlery, while the cabinets above act as a sort of smart hub of our microwave, blender, and other electrics that can be used and then restored with ease. And as for the fridge and freezer, well, they're hidden in each of the two end cabinets. A grand total of 18 bulbs illuminates this space from various points, creating nuanced ambient lighting that highlights particular features. You'll also see there the neoclassical column hiding the powerful extraction tube within it. Strategically placed plants and flowers tower over the kitchen, bringing to life the many floral elements of the ceiling frescoes and giving vitality to what can in some homes be a rather sterile space. And finally, the power of symmetry is used to full effect with the only exposed industrial elements of the sink, hob, oven and hood all lined up perfectly along a central axis. And with the very first portion of this palace renovation complete, on the one hand, we could share it with our friends, but on the other, realize that there was still so much more to come. Until the next episode of Renovating a Palace, enjoy these other videos of mine linked above and see what else I have to offer on my channel. Alla prossima da Firenze.